Isolda recognized her husband's cloak before she saw the woman wearing it. Black wool swept across the floor of Nightfall's great hall. Its silver wolf clasps fastened beneath Alara's throat. A fresh bite darkened the skin above her collarbone. Kale's scent clung to her cedar, smoke, and the unmistakable heat of a mate who had shared more than shelter. 12 days had passed since Isolda delivered 3 sons. She sat beneath the royal dais, with 3 bassinets arranged beside her chair. Theo slept with his left arm secured against his chest. Lycan lay wrapped in 2 wool blankets, his tiny face barely visible. Elias made a thin, wet sound. Isolda turned before anyone else noticed. His lips had gone pale. "Bring the blue vial," she ordered. Royal healer Mara Quinn hurried forward, but Isolde had already lifted Elias. She supported his head, rubbed 2 fingers over his sternum, then pressed her mouth close to his nose. "Breathe, sweetheart." The child's chest remained still. Kale stopped beneath the archway. For one fractured second, concern broke through the rigid expression he had carried home from Moon Temple. Isolda tapped Elias's heel. The baby inhaled with a weak gasp. His cry followed small, furious, alive. Isolde closed her eyes for half a heartbeat. Then she returned him to the bassinet and looked at her husband. Snow melted in Kale's dark hair. His ceremony coat was wrinkled. A red ribbon circled his wrist, stained with blood that did not belong to him. Alara moved closer to his side. Kale's wolf shifted beneath his skin, unsettled by the scent of Isolda's pain. He had prepared explanations during the journey home. None survived the way she looked at him. High Seer Malrek stepped forward. Last night, His Majesty suffered a violent eclipse episode. Lady Alara prevented his death. From inside his bed? Isolde asked. Alara's cheeks flushed. It was not planned. Isolda's gaze moved to the bite on her sister's neck. No, planning usually leaves cleaner marks. A few councilmen lowered their eyes. Kale descended 1 step. Isolda, enough. She studied him carefully. When did you know? His jaw tightened. When did you realize she was not me? Alara caught his sleeve. Kale glanced toward the 3 bassinets, as though their presence could force Isolda to soften. I was not myself. That was not my question. The mate bond carried his hesitation straight into her chest. Kale looked away first. Malrek unrolled a parchment across the council table. To preserve stability, Lady Alara will be named Sacred Consort. Queen Isolda will retain her title and continue overseeing the royal household. Queen Isolda, not wife, not mate. An office with a heartbeat. Kale lowered his voice. The boys need their mother. The kingdom needs its Luna. This is not the time for emotional decisions. Pain tightened across Isolde's healing abdomen. She kept one hand on Elias's bassinet until it passed. You returned wearing my sister's blood, she said. Yet my emotions are the threat to this kingdom. Ilara's expression hardened for an instant, before becoming wounded again. Malrek placed a second document beside the first. Until Her Majesty fully recovers, care of the heirs will transfer to the royal nursery, under council supervision. Mara inhaled sharply. Kale frowned. That was not discussed. No, Isolda said. She reached for the parchment. The wax remained soft, but the preparation date had already been entered in the lower margin. 3 days ago. Kale had not yet left Moon Temple. The council had prepared to remove her sons before his supposed eclipse episode, before Alara entered his room, before anyone could claim one reckless night had caused the crisis. Isolda looked at Malrek. For the first time, his calm faltered. She removed the silver Luna seal from her neck. Alara straightened, expecting it. Isolda did not hand it to her. She placed it inside Lycan's bassinet, beneath the child's tiny fist. The crown may debate my title, she said. It will not take my sons. Kale moved toward her. Isolde. She raised one hand. He stopped, stunned less by the gesture than by the fact that she no longer feared what refusing him might cost. Later, behind the locked doors of the royal nursery, Isolda checked every bottle, blanket, and medical chest. The wooden box beneath her bed stood open. Inside it, the linen from her delivery had been disturbed. The blood-stained birth cloth was gone. Someone had stolen enough of her blood to make another woman smell like Kale's mate. The nursery door sealed behind Isolda. Only then did her knees weaken. She caught the changing table before she fell, one hand pressed beneath her ribs, the other holding the empty wooden box that had once protected the blood-stained birth cloth. Mara locked the second door. Sit. I am sitting. You are folding. Blood darkened Isolda's gray gown. The command Cale had forced through the mate bond in the great hall had torn something that had barely begun to heal. In the washroom, Rosemary steamed from a copper basin. Isolda gripped the marble, while Mara removed the bandages. The final layer came away red. You could hemorrhage if he commands you again. Then he will not get another chance. Isolda bit a towel while Mara cleaned the wound. Pain climbed hot through her spine, but no sound crossed the nursery wall. Theo stirred. Lycan answered with a thin cry, and Elias followed with a wet cough. Isolda pushed away before Mara tied the fresh bandage. She checked Theo's shoulder, tucked another warm cloth beneath Lycan, then lifted Elias. His breathing had steadied, but his medicine bottle sat 3 inches from where she had left it. The wax looked untouched. The stopper did not. She poured 1 drop onto a silver spoon. Above the lamp, amber turned blue. Mara's face hardened. Belladonna and silver salt. Enough to slow his lungs? Enough to make the next episode look natural. Isolda placed the vial beside the empty box. Her blood could imitate her scent. Her son's weak lungs could make her look careless and unfit. Do not report this. They tried to kill him. They tried to make me lose him. A knock sounded. Cale entered before either woman answered. His scent filled the nursery, familiar enough to hurt and altered enough to turn Isolda's stomach. He had changed clothes, but Jasmine lingered beneath cedar. His gaze dropped to the bloody bandages. What happened? You commanded a woman 12 days after she was cut open. I was stopping a dangerous choice. No, you were proving you still could. Mara moved between him and the bassinets. Cale lowered his voice. Elara's position changes nothing between us. It changes the sheets. She will hold a ceremonial title. You remain Luna. You want her in your bed and me at your council table. I want our sons protected from scandal. Isolda looked at the 3 bassinets. Which one needs the blue medicine before dawn? Cale followed her gaze. Theo slept nearest the hearth. Elias lay beneath the carved moon. Lycan's bassinet held the silver Luna seal. Cale reached toward Theo. Isolda stepped in front of him. That is Theo. Elias is the child who nearly stopped breathing in front of you. Pain crossed Cale's face, followed by anger at being made to feel it. I have been ruling a kingdom, and I have been keeping 3 children alive. He finally looked at her. Her skin was gray. Damp hair clung to her temples. One hand braced her abdomen while the other rested over Elias's chest. Isolda, last night. When did you know? Cale closed his eyes. The mate bond tightened, pushing truth where excuses had stood. Before dawn, Mara turned away. Something inside Isolda became quiet, not broken, finished. And you stayed. He said nothing. She handed Mara the poisoned vial. Seal it with the birth records. Cale frowned. What is that? Something you failed to notice. Isolda opened the feeding ledger and began drawing a supply route that did not exist. What are you doing? Making sure tomorrow's milk arrives. The lie passed because Cale had never learned the nursery accounts. After he left, Isolda folded the coded map into a narrow strip and reached for the window latch. It would not move. She checked the second window and the service door. Both had been secured from outside. Mara's face hardened. This is not protection. No. Isolda slipped the map into the hem of Lycan's blanket. It is custody. Beyond the nursery wall, Boots took position in the corridor. Mara glanced toward the bassinets. How do we get a message out? Isolda touched Lycan's blanket, feeling the coated strip beneath the hem. Laundry leaves at dawn. So do milk bottles, ash buckets, and soiled linens. You cannot walk past those guards. I do not need to. Lycan whimpered. Isolda lifted him carefully, and the silver seal beneath his fist gave one faint pulse. The council had locked the princes inside, and their mother with them. Before sunrise, Mara carried a basket of bloodied linens through the servants' corridor. 2 council guards searched every fold. One wrinkled his nose at the smell of milk, medicine, and postpartum blood. Neither touched the narrow strip sewn inside Lycan's smallest blanket. At the laundry yard, Mara handed the basket to an elderly Omega named Ruth. Burn the stained cloth, Mara said. Ruth saw the white thread tied around the handle, the signal Isolde had used during wartime shortages. She gave no sign of recognition. The basket left nightfall beneath sacks of ash. Beyond the eastern gate, Ruth cut open the blanket's hem. Inside lay a map of infant feeding routes that led nowhere, except to anyone who knew white cartographer cipher. She placed it inside a silver tube and tied it to a black-winged hawk waiting beneath the bridge. The bird flew east. Inside the royal nursery, Isolda prepared her sons for the ceremony. Theo wore a soft brace beneath his white gown. Elias received the last safe dose of blue medicine. Lycan remained wrapped in warmed wool, the Luna seal hidden against his chest. Mara tightened Isolda's abdominal bandage. "You should be in bed." "Hell, I was in bed when they planned to take my children." Outside, bells announced Alara's investiture. Kale had ordered Isolda to attend. Refusal would allow Malrek to declare her mentally unstable. She entered the great hall, pushing a wide carriage containing all 3 bassinets. Every head turned toward her. Alara stood beneath the royal arch in silver silk. She wore Luna colors without the Luna seal. Kale stood beside her, dressed in black ceremonial armor. His eyes dropped to the carriage. "You brought them? You ordered their mother to attend." Malrek raised both hands. "We gather to protect Nightfall from scandal and instability." Isolda stopped before the dais. "You prepared custody papers before the scandal existed." A murmur moved through the nobles. Malrek smiled. Postpartum distress often produces suspicion. Alara stepped forward. "Isolda, please. No one wants to replace you." Lycan began to cry. Isolda adjusted his blanket without looking at her sister, then stopped dressing for the position. Kale's mouth tightened. Malrek lifted a silver circlet. "Lady Alara Vale, kneel and accept the title of sacred consort." Before Alara's knees touched the stone, a horn sounded beyond the walls. It was not a nightfall call. The note rolled through the great hall, low enough to shake dust from the rafters. A second horn answered. The doors opened. Lycan soldiers entered in black armor, their eyes burning red. They formed 2 silent lines from the entrance to the royal dais. At their center walked Varic Morcant. He carried no sword. He did not need one. Power moved around him with such control that Kale's guards lowered their weapons without being ordered. Varic stopped beside Isolda's carriage. His gaze passed over Theo's brace, Elias's pale mouth, and the heated stones beneath Lycan's blankets. Then he looked at the blood seeping through Isolda's gown. Kale descended from the dais. "You enter my hall without invitation." Varic set a black tablet on the council table. Obsidian struck wood with a sound like a tomb closing. "Your father's invitation remains valid." Silver writing awakened across the stone. "Crown debt of the first house." Malrek's face lost its color. That debt was never meant to be collected. Debts rarely are. Kale read the glowing terms. "You will not take anyone from my household." Varic did not look at him. "I have not chosen." Isolda stepped forward. Kale's wolf surged against the mate bond. "Do not." She pressed her thumb against the edge of the tablet until blood appeared. "I am Isolde Ravencroft, lawful Luna of Nightfall and guardian of Theo, Elias, and Lycan Ravencroft." The tablet drank her blood. "I enter Lycan protection with my royal household." Kale's command crashed through the hall. "Isolde, stop." Pain tore across her healing wound. Her knees struck the floor, but both hands remained locked around the carriage handle. Varic's eyes flashed crimson. His authority collided with Kale's command and shattered it. He knelt beside Isolda without touching her. "Name those under your protection." Her breath came unevenly. "Thou." The oldest child stirred. "Elias." A fragile breath left the second bassinet. "Lycan." The smallest fist closed around the hidden Luna seal. Isolda lifted her head. "And their mother." The obsidian tablet blazed white. Varic rose and removed his cloak. He spread it over all 3 bassinets before signaling his guards. "Ironfang accepts the first house." Kale moved toward the carriage. The tablet released a wall of silver light between them. "They are my sons." Isolda met his gaze across the barrier. "You remembered that when another king came to protect them." Lycan guards lifted the carriage. Varic offered Isolda his hand but did not close his fingers until she placed hers in his. As the procession crossed the great hall, Alara stood beneath the unused circlet. Outside, snow covered the courtyard. Ironfang wagons waited beyond the gates. Isolda climbed inside beside her sons. The wheels began to turn. A mile from nightfall, Lycan's breathing changed. Isolda pulled back his blanket and found silver dust coating the rear wheel. Someone had poisoned the road before the Lycan King ever entered the hall. Silver dust glittered along the rear wheel like frost. Isolda touched one grain with the tip of her fingernail. A metallic sting climbed into her skin. "Stop the wagons." Rowan rode alongside the carriage. "We are still inside nightfall range." "Then whoever prepared this expected us to keep moving." Varic raised one hand. The entire Lycan column halted. Lucan's lips had begun to pale. His small body lay too still beneath the warmed blankets. Isolda pulled him against her chest, opened the front of her gown, and pressed his cheek to her skin. "He is losing heat." Mara climbed into the carriage. She checked the infant's feet and swore under her breath. "The silver is disrupting his circulation." Varic stripped off his leather bracers. "What do you need?" "Wind cover, hot stones, no open flame near the carriage." His orders moved down the column at once. Soldiers removed sections of armor and locked them together along the exposed side of the road. Others dug heated stones from beneath the supply braziers and wrapped them in wool. No one questioned why a Lycan army had stopped for a child weighing less than 6 pounds. Isolde held Lucan tighter. Her own body shook, though not entirely from cold. Theo began crying in the first bassinet. Elias did not. Isolde turned. His chest had stopped moving. Blue vial. Mara reached for the medicine case. The bottle inside carried the correct wax, but the liquid was too clear. Isolde caught her wrist. "Not that one. There is no other." Isolde smelled the stopper. Bitterness struck the back of her throat. "Moonbane." Rowan's hand went to his sword. "Inside a healer case?" "Someone replaced it before we left nightfall." Elias's mouth opened without sound. Isolde laid him on a folded blanket. 2 fingers pressed beneath his ribs, gentler than a heartbeat, then released. "Come back." "Nothing." She stimulated his heel. Mara cleared his airway. The world narrowed to the faint rise that refused to come. Varic stood outside the carriage entrance, one hand gripping the frame hard enough to crack the wood. He had watched soldiers die without blinking. The stillness of one newborn frightened him more than any battlefield. Isolde pressed again. Elias gasped. A thin cry escaped him. Mara exhaled sharply and wrapped him against her shoulder. Isolde's vision darkened at the edges. She reached for the wall, but her palm missed. Varic caught her before her head struck the floor. "Put me down. You are burning. I have 3 sons in a poisoned wagon, and they need their mother conscious." He lowered her onto the bench without taking Lucan from her arms. He did not attempt to touch the child. Mara checked Isolde's forehead, an abdominal bandage. Fresh blood had spread beneath the linen. "She needs fever root now." Only 1 sealed packet remained. Isolde looked at Elias. "Use half for his breathing mixture. You may have an infection. He may not survive another pause." Mara's jaw tightened, but she divided the packet. Rowan entered with the arrow pulled from the carriage wall. Nightfall's wolf crest had been carved into the shaft. "Royal Armory." Isolde examined the fletching. The feathers had been cut unevenly. Nightfall arrows were balanced to fly through mountain wind. This one would drift left. She rotated the shaft and found a crescent burned beneath the royal crest. "Moon Council." Rowan's suspicion sharpened. "Or someone wants us to think so." "Then follow the main road and ask them." Ahead, the pass narrowed between 2 black ridges, too narrow for the wagons to turn once inside. Isolde studied the snow. Horse tracks crossed the road but did not continue beyond the ridge. "They are waiting in the pass." Varic looked toward the mountains. "Alternative? There is an abandoned healer station west of the frozen quarry. That road was buried years ago. Only the upper trail. The miners used a drainage route below it." Rowan shook his head. "The wagons will not fit. They will if we remove the outer wheels and use the sled runners." Varic gave the order. The column dismantled itself in the snow. Soldiers secured the bassinets while the carriage was lowered onto iron runners. Isolde directed the route from memory, fighting each wave of fever. By nightfall, a low stone building appeared beneath the ridge. Tessa Bloom, the station healer, opened the door with a crossbow aimed at Varic's chest. "We have newborns," he said. "Then lower your voice." Inside, warmth returned slowly. Lucan's color improved. Elias breathed beneath Mara's watch. Theo slept against Isolde's side. A Lycan messenger arrived after midnight, carrying a sealed letter from Kyle. Varic handed it to Isolde. She broke the wax. The letter demanded the immediate return of Nightfall's royal heirs and accused Ironfang of stealing protected crown property. There was no question about their health, no mention of her wound, no name except his own beneath the command. Cale's first message did not ask whether his sons were alive. It asked when his property would be returned. Isolda woke to 3 different cries. Theo's was sharp and angry. Elias made a breathless, broken sound. Lucan's voice barely rose above the crackle of the hearth. She tried to sit. Pain seized her abdomen, and the ceiling tilted. "Stay down," Mara ordered. "My sons are alive." Tessa stood beside Elias's cot, counting each fragile breath. Mara held Lucan against a heated cloth. Theo kicked inside Varic's arms, furious at being handled by a man who looked capable of breaking castle gates, but had no idea how to support a newborn's neck. Varic glanced at Isolda. "He appears offended. Your hand is under his shoulder. It is under most of him. Move it higher." He obeyed immediately. Theo stopped crying. Varic looked almost suspicious of the result. Tessa hid a smile. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. You have defeated a 12-day-old child." He surrendered without honor. Isolda would have laughed if her body had not hurt. Instead, a cough tore through her chest. Mara pressed her back against the pillows and checked the bandage beneath her gown. "The fever is rising." Lucan whimpered again. Isolda reached for him. Varic did not bring the child closer until she nodded. He placed Lucan carefully against her chest, then stepped away as Tessa adjusted the blanket. No command, no assumption that rank gave him permission. Outside, the station bell began ringing as soldiers changed watch. All 3 infants startled. Varic turned toward the door. "Stop that bell." Rowan appeared in the doorway. "The patrol uses it every hour. Then the patrol will learn to count." The bell did not ring again. Hours later, the fever broke enough for Isolda to stand beside the narrow table in the station's back room. A map lay open beneath an oil lamp. Varic placed another map beside it. The parchment was older, its edges burned. White ink marked a hidden passage through Frost Pass, 3 water caches, and the position of an enemy ambush. Isolda recognized every line. Varic watched her face. 3,000 Lycan soldiers walked out of that pass because someone sent this to me. She kept her hands at her sides. The route was available to anyone who knew where to look. No, the Northern Spring had been buried for 40 years. The map included its depth. Isolda said nothing. Varic touched the small symbol in the lower corner, a white compass divided by a crescent. The white cartographer. Mara stood near the door, silent. Varic did not demand an answer. "I searched for the person who drew it. To reward them? To ask why they saved an army that had once fought Nightfall. Soldiers have families even when kings disagree." His gaze sharpened, not with suspicion, but recognition. "That answer cost you nothing. It cost me Cale's trust when he discovered I had redirected grain to feed Lycan prisoners. And yet he never knew your name was on this. He knew I drew maps. He preferred believing they belonged in his office." Varic folded the old parchment with care. "Ironfang does not owe Nightfall for that route. No, it owes you. I did not send it to create a debt. Debts do not require permission." A cry came from the next room. Isolda moved before the sound finished. Her knees weakened at the threshold, but Varic did not touch her. He simply opened the door wider and remained outside until she reached the bassinets. At nightfall, Cale stood in the empty royal nursery, with Isolda's letter still clenched in his hand. Protected crown property. The phrase looked uglier inside the room where his sons had slept. 3 hooks remained on the wall. Beneath them hung embroidered name cards. Tau, Elias, Lucan. Cale approached the feeding table. Isolda's handwriting filled a ledger. Theo, support left shoulder when lifting. Elias, blue medicine before dawn. Count breathing after feeding. Lucan, skin contact every 2 hours. Never allow his feet to cool. Cale read the page twice. He had held Theo once after the birth. Or perhaps it had been Elias. He could not remember. The mate bond tightened violently. Heat flooded his chest, followed by a wave of weakness that forced him to grip the table. Isolda's fever moved through the damaged connection. Beneath it came 3 faint pulses, 2 small and uneven. Alive. Barely. Cale turned toward the door. Bring me Mara's medical records. Every page from Isolda's pregnancy. A servant bowed and fled. On the table, beneath the feeding ledger, Cale found a folded warning written 8 months earlier. Moonbane shipments have resumed under council authority. Do not allow the temple to administer anything during an eclipse. His own signature appeared beneath it. Received. He had never read it. At the healer station, Rowan entered carrying a transport ledger recovered from the poisoned wagon. He placed it before Isolda. Every Moonbane shipment listed over the previous 6 months bore her authorization. The signatures were perfect. Even the private mark beneath her name had been copied. Rowan's expression closed. Either someone has studied you for years, he said, or Ironfang just placed its heirs under the protection of the woman who poisoned an Alpha King. Isolda's name was written on every bottle that had destroyed her family. Rowan left the forged ledger open beneath the war room lamps. Every Moonbane shipment carried Isolda's signature. The curves, pressure marks, and private crescent beneath her name matched perfectly. 3 Lycan commanders watched her as though Varic had brought poison into Ironfang wrapped in a blood-stained gown. Isolda remained standing. Her fever had broken, but weakness still moved through her legs whenever she stayed upright too long. One hand rested against the edge of the table. The other turned the ledger toward the light. "Where are the wagons?" she asked. Rowan's expression hardened. "Confiscated. I need their wheels." A commander gave a humorless laugh. "You expect Wood to prove innocence?" "No. Weight does." Varic stood at the head of the table, saying nothing. His refusal to rescue her with royal authority placed the decision where Isolda wanted it inside the evidence. The wagons were brought into the lower courtyard. Isolda examined the axle grooves, bridge tolls, and cargo weights recorded beside each shipment. She requested an old weather ledger and the maintenance report for Northbridge. Rowan handed them over reluctantly. "This entry claims 40 Moonbane crates crossed Northbridge 6 months ago," Isolda said. "So?" "The bridge collapsed 8 months ago." One commander leaned closer. Isolda pointed to the cargo total. Even before the collapse, the bridge limit was 12,000 pounds. This wagon supposedly carried twice that amount without breaking an axle. Rowan studied the numbers. "The shipment never traveled," she continued. "The council created paperwork, copied my signature, and removed Moonbane directly from a storage site inside Nightfall." She scraped a flake of blue-black ink from the ledger and dropped it into vinegar. The liquid turned green. "Royal Iron ink," she said. "My office used walnut ink. Only the Alpha's private office, the council archive, and the royal seal chamber had access to this." The accusation no longer rested on her name. It pointed toward Kael's own palace. A horn sounded from the outer wall. A messenger entered, snow packed into his hair. 3 northern settlements have exhausted their grain. The western pass is blocked, and 2 supply teams turned back. Rowan swore. "How long?" 2 days before the children begin rationing. The commanders began arguing over soldiers, sleds, and avalanche risk. Isolda reached for the regional map. Varic looked at her pale face. "You should return to your sons." "I will. After theirs have food." She marked an abandoned mining road beneath the eastern ridge. "That tunnel stays below the avalanche shelf. Remove the wagon tops, use low sled frames, and divide the grain into smaller loads." "The mine flooded years ago," Rowan said. "Only the southern shaft. The ventilation route remained open because Ironfang used it to move prisoners during the border war." Rowan stared at her. "That route is not on our military maps." "It was on Nightfall's." Varic's eyes narrowed. "How quickly?" "If the first sled leaves within the hour, the nearest village receives grain before dawn." The operation moved under Isolda's direction. She adjusted the teams by weight, temperature, and distance. She ordered heated stones placed beneath the grain covers so the flour would not freeze into solid blocks. She scheduled every stop around the feeding times of Theo, Elias, and Lycan, because she refused to remain separated from them longer than necessary. By sunset, the first signal fire appeared on the northern ridge. The grain had arrived. When Isolda returned to the war room, the commanders were waiting. Varic placed a white metal seal beside her hand. The white command seal grants access to Ironfang's routes, stores, and war councils. Isolda picked it up but did not accept it. "What authority does it give you over me?" "None." "Bruh. What authority does it give me over Ironfang?" "Only what you can defend before this table." She read every line engraved beneath the seal. Then she closed her fingers around it. The doors opened. Mara entered, supported by 2 guards, her face gray from exhaustion. A leather medical case hung from one hand. "I found the pregnancy records," she said. Isolda crossed the room. Mara opened the case and removed a series of charts stained with old blood. Each page tracked Isolda's pulse, the triplets' heartbeats, and the violent surges that passed through the mate bond whenever Kale's curse awakened. You absorbed part of his feral episodes throughout the pregnancy, Mara said. That weakened your body and placed the boys under stress. Isolda already knew the cost. What she did not know was why Mara's hands were trembling. The night labor began, Mara continued. Someone added a contraction agent to your moonroot tea. Varic's expression turned cold. Isolda looked at the date, 3 weeks before the expected birth. Mara placed another document beside it. An order from Moon Council authorizing preparation of the crown chamber before the children were born. The council knew they would be triplets, Mara whispered. They needed them alive before the first full moon. Isolda pressed one hand over the healing wound beneath her gown. Her sons had not entered the world early because her body had failed them. Someone had forced the birth. The council had begun sacrificing her children before they ever took their first breath. The first grain riot began before noon. Villagers crowded Nightfall's western gate, holding empty sacks above their heads, while guards struggled to keep the iron bars closed. Inside the supply office, Alara stood over 3 ledgers she did not understand. The mountain villages received nothing, Quartermaster Dane said. The western garrison received 6 months of grain. I signed the emergency order you gave me. You signed the release column, not the destination column. Alara's face hardened. Then correct it. The grain is already gone. Outside, someone threw a stone. It struck the gate with a sharp metallic crack. Alara looked toward the windows. Send soldiers. Dane hesitated. They are hungry families. They are challenging royal authority. They are asking for flour. High Seer Malrek entered before Alara could answer. His gray robes moved silently across the floor. Fear travels faster than hunger, he said. Give the crowd something to fear. Alara straightened. Arrest the loudest men. Dane stared at her. Isolda had ended riots before they began. She knew which villages shared mills, which elders could calm a crowd, and which supply captains lied to protect their own stores. Alara knew only that the people outside were chanting another woman's name. I sold, the crowd shouted. The sound reached the royal wing. Kale stood alone in the nursery, one hand resting against the empty frame of Elias's bassinet. The mate bond carried only distance now, a faint ache beneath his ribs and the occasional flash of Isolda's exhaustion. A servant had placed Mara's recovered medical records on the feeding table. Kale opened the first volume. The entries began during Isolda's 3rd month of pregnancy. Eclipse surge at 2:14 a.m. His Majesty remained asleep. Luna absorbed the first wave through the bond. The next page recorded blood loss. Another listed contractions at 26 weeks. Kale turned faster. Every feral episode he barely remembered had passed into Isolda's body. Each time his wolf calmed, the triplets' heartbeats became irregular. At 30 weeks, Mara had written, Luna advised to sever the shared channel temporarily. She refused while the king remained near council healers. Kale gripped the edge of the table. He remembered that night. He had awakened without pain and found Isolda sitting near the window, pale and sweating. He had asked why she was awake. She had said Elias was restless. He had believed her, because believing her required nothing from him. The final pages were stained dark brown. During labor, Theo's shoulder had lodged beneath the pelvic bone. Elias's heart had stopped for 11 seconds. Lycan had been born too cold to cry. A note beneath the delivery report read, The Luna lost consciousness after ordering all remaining moonroot given to the king. Feral symptoms stabilized at dawn. Kale sat down hard. 12 days later, he had returned carrying Alara's scent and expected Isolde to discuss appearances. The door opened. Marcus entered without waiting for permission. The northern packs have closed 2 trade roads. 3 healers resigned after Alara ordered the arrest of a midwife. Kale, shut the book. Bring Isolde home. Marcus did not move. She is not a missing official. She is Nightfall's Luna. She entered Lycan protection because Nightfall tried to take her children. Kale's wolf rose at the word children. They are my sons. Marcus looked at the untouched medicine chart. Then name which one stops breathing. Kale's silence answered. Beneath the council chamber, Alara followed Malrek's voice through a half-open archive door. The triplets return before the first full moon, he said. Once the sovereign seal wakes, The king becomes ceremonial. And Ilara? Another elder asked. Useful until the transfer. What transfer? The curse cannot remain in KL once we control the army. It requires another vessel. Ilara pressed a hand against her mouth. Malrek continued calmly. The sacred consort will be remembered as the woman who gave her life to save Nightfall. The elders murmured approval. Ilara looked at the oath mark on her wrist. The skin had already begun to darken around it. They had promised her recognition. They had never promised survival. After midnight, she entered Malrek's private office and found the crown chamber plan beneath a locked prayer box. 3 infant cradles had been drawn around the sovereign seal. Silver channels connected each cradle to a 4th circle marked Sacred Vessel. Her name was written inside it. Ilara tore away the final page before footsteps sounded in the corridor. She escaped through the chapel passage with 2 sheets hidden beneath her dress. At the eastern tower, she tied 1 page to a messenger raven. The note carried only 7 words. Protect me, and I will expose them all. The raven flew toward Ironfang. Ilara kept the final page pressed against her heart. The name beneath the last authorization was worth more than her confession, and she intended to make Isolda pay for it. Ilara reached Ironfang at dusk, with blood running from her oath mark. The guards found her barefoot outside the eastern gate, wrapped in a healer's cloak, darkened by rain. One hand clutched the torn crown chamber plan. The other remained pressed against her wrist, where black veins had spread beneath the skin. Rowan drew his sword. She does not enter the inner court. Ilara Vale requests sanctuary, she said, nearly choking on the words. As a witness, Varic stood beneath the gate arch. Witnesses bring truth. Ilara looked past him toward Isolda. I brought enough. Isolda had come from the nursery with the white command seal at her waist. Her abdominal wound still pulled when she walked too quickly, but she showed no weakness as she approached the woman who had entered her husband's bed. You will not come near my sons. Ilara's eyes flickered. I am their aunt. You used their blood to bargain for a title. Varic signaled the guards. They escorted Ilara into the lower interrogation room, far from the nursery. Rowan searched her cloak, boots, hair, and medical satchel. He found 3 needles, 1 moonbane ampule, and the 2nd page of Malrek's plan. Isolda sat across from her. Mara remained by the wall. Varic stood near the door, close enough to intervene but far enough to leave every question to Isolda. Ilara placed her burned wrist on the table. Malrek bound me to the council after the triplets were born. If I speak against them, the oath mark closes my heart. Then speak quickly, Isolda said. Ilara's mouth tightened. You always were efficient, and you always mistook cruelty for courage. The first confession came in fragments. Ilara admitted taking the blood-stained cloth from beneath Isolda's bed. She had pressed the blood against her neck and wrists before entering Kale's chamber at Moon Temple. Moonbane weakened his mind, Ilara said. Your scent guided his wolf. Isolde kept her hands folded. When did the drug fade? Ilara looked down. When? Before dawn. The answer struck with less force than Isolde expected. Perhaps Kale's hesitation in the nursery had already given her the truth. Hearing it from Ilara only removed the last place where hope could hide. He knew you were not me. Yes, and he stayed. Ilara swallowed. He said leaving would make the night look like an attack. Malrek told him a sacred consort could turn it into an alliance. A single tear slipped down Isolda's cheek. She did not wipe it away. Who prepared the moonbane? Malrek ordered it. I measured the dose. Mara closed her eyes. Ilara continued. I knew they wanted the boys brought into the crown chamber. I believed they needed a few drops of blood to recognize the heirs. You saw the silver channels. I told myself they would survive. Isolde leaned forward. You told yourself many things because the truth was inconvenient. The oath mark pulsed. Ilara gasped and collapsed against the table. Mara checked her wrist. The binding is tightening. Then give us the final page, Varic said. Ilara pulled a folded sheet from inside her bodice. A royal authorization appeared beneath Malrek's orders. Kale's seal marked the bottom. Rowan swore. The Alpha King approved the transfer. No, Isolda said. A messenger had arrived an hour earlier carrying Kale's written denial. She placed his letter beside the plan. I did not authorize the crown chamber order. My seal was copied. I submit my private office to inspection. Both documents bore his mark. Mara carried the letter into the nursery, where Elias slept beneath a warmed blanket. The infant's breath paused for 2 heartbeats. Black oath ink on the crown chamber plan remained dull. The ink on Cale's letter flashed silver. Elias inhaled again. Mara returned with both pages. The child's blood resonance rejected the false oath, she said. Cale is telling the truth. Alara stared at the letter. Then someone inside his private office gave Malrec access. Who? Isolde asked. I never saw the face. Only a hand wearing a black wolf signet. Marcus's signet. Or a copy designed to condemn him. Before anyone could speak, Rowan entered with a message from Nightfall. His expression had gone hard. The Moon Council has summoned the 9 Crowns Conclave. They demand the triplets appear before the first full moon for heir recognition. That is tomorrow night, Mara said. Varic looked at Isolde. You do not have to return. Yes, she said. I do. Ilara lifted her head. They want the boys in that chamber. Isolde gathered the forged order, Cale's true letter, the Moonbane ampule, and the incomplete plan. Then I will bring them exactly where Malrec expects. Varic's gaze sharpened. With what army? Isolde fastened the white command seal at her waist. Both of them. She would carry her sons back into Nightfall and turn the council's ritual into its trial. Nightfall's gates opened beneath 9 royal banners. Isolde entered first. 3 guarded bassinets rolled behind her beneath Ironfang's black standard. Varic walked at her right, Rowan at her left. Ilara followed in chains light enough for a witness and heavy enough to remind everyone what she had done. Cale waited beneath the great hall arch. His eyes found Isolde before they found the children. The damaged mate bond pulled once between them, carrying grief, exhaustion, and something that might once have brought her comfort. Isolde felt it and kept walking. The 9 crowns sat in a half-circle around the sovereign altar. High Seer Malrec stood beside it, gray robes spotless, expression calm. You bring foreign soldiers into a royal heir ceremony, he said. I bring witnesses, Isolde replied. She placed the Moonbane ampule on the altar, then the forged transport ledger. Mara's medical records followed, along with the crown chamber plan and Cale's written denial. Malrec barely glanced at them. A desperate mother can manufacture many stories. Cale stepped forward. My private seal was copied, and your judgment has been compromised by a damaged bond, Malrec answered. Ilara laughed once, bitterly. That excuse sounded better when you used it on me. Every face turned toward her. She raised her burned wrist. I measured the Moonbane. I stole Isolde's blood. Malrec ordered both. The hall erupted. Malrec lifted his staff. A condemned woman, bargaining for mercy. No mercy was offered, Isolde said. A cry rose from the center bassinet. Isolde turned. Something was wrong. Lucan's blanket had been folded inward beneath the chin. Tessa never folded it that way. Neither did Mara. Lucan overheated easily. The blanket was always crossed beneath one shoulder. Isolde reached the carriage in 3 steps and pulled the cloth aside. The face beneath it shimmered. Not Lucan. An illusion. She tore open the other bassinets. Theo and Elias vanished into silver smoke. Varic's power struck the hall hard enough to crack the nearest pillar. Seal the gates. And Malrec smiled. Below the floor, 3 newborns began to cry. Isolde looked at the crown chamber plan, the western stair. She ran. Pain pulled across her healing abdomen, but she did not slow. Rowan and Varic followed. Cale seized a fallen sword and came behind them as Ironfang's soldiers clashed with council guards in the corridors. The hidden stair ended at a stone door, marked with 3 blood channels. Theo's cry came through the wall. Cale struck the lock. Moonbane smoke burst from the seams. His body convulsed. Bones shifted beneath his skin. Black fur tore through his ceremonial coat as Rook forced his way forward, massive and wild. The cursed wolf turned toward Isolde, teeth bared. Varic shifted between one breath and the next. The 2 kings collided. Stone split beneath them. Do not kill him, Isolde ordered. Varic's red eyes flashed toward her. My sons will not wake to their father's blood. He drove Cale against the wall instead, holding the larger wolf away from the chamber door. Isolde dropped beside the lock and pressed the white command seal into its center. Nothing happened. Theo screamed inside. She studied the carved lines. The false royal seal had been placed backward, forcing the blood channels to feed inward. Isolda turned the command seal upside down. The door opened. 3 silver cradles surrounded the sovereign seal. Theo's left arm had been strapped beneath him. Elias's lips were blue. Lycan lay directly on the black stone, his tiny wrist cut above a silver basin. Malrek's acolytes froze. Isolda drew Mara's silver blade. "Step away from my children." One acolyte reached for Lycan. Isolde threw the blade. It struck the chain above the cradle, dropping the restraint bar across his hand. Rowan took the remaining guards before they could move. Isolde reached Elias first. No breath. She cleared his mouth, pressed 2 fingers beneath his ribs, and whispered, "Not tonight." His chest rose. Behind her, Lycan's blood touched the sovereign seal. The chamber shook. Malrek entered through the eastern passage, staff blazing. The heirs belonged to Nightfall. They belonged to themselves. The blood channels lit. Isolde cut her own palm and slammed it over the seal, covering Lycan's blood with hers. "Take mine." The stone flared white. A voice moved through every oath in the kingdom. "Who guards the crown without claiming it?" Isolde gathered Theo and Elias against her, while Rowan lifted Lycan from the altar. "I do." The sovereign seal accepted her blood. Above them, thousands of soldiers dropped their weapons. Kale returned to human form beneath Varic's grip, bleeding but alive. Malrek's staff went dark. Kale looked at his sons, then at Isolde. Before the 9 crowns, he confessed the truth. "The drug deceived my wolf. It did not control me after dawn. I knew Ilara was not my mate, and I stayed." No one moved. Isolde placed all 3 children together beneath her cloak. Then she looked toward the judges. "Bring the severance blade." Kale had lost command of his army. Now he had to decide whether he would release the woman he still loved. The severance blade arrived before dawn. It was carried by 2 neutral judges and placed between the sovereign seal and Kale's abandoned crown. Moonlight caught along its silver edge. Malrek knelt in chains. Ilara stood several steps away, her burned oath mark wrapped in white cloth. Without the sacred consort circlet, she looked younger, but not innocent. The 9 crowns delivered judgment 1 charge at a time. Malrek and the elders who had prepared the crown chamber were stripped of rank, oath protection, and pack names. They would spend the remainder of their lives inside the fortress beneath Hollow Moon, where no Alpha command could reach them. Ilara was denied the mercy she had expected from blood. "You confessed," Isolde said, holding Lycan against her chest. "That saved lives. It does not erase what you chose before you became afraid." Ilara's eyes filled. "I am still your sister. You were my sister when you stole my blood." The words landed quietly. Ilara lost her Veil inheritance, her healer license, and every claim to the triplets. She would serve at a border clinic under guard, treating the displaced families harmed by council policies. No title, no royal rooms, no one required to remember her name. As guards led her away, Ilara looked back once. Isolde did not. Later, the great hall emptied until only the family remained. Kale placed the Nightfall crown on the altar. Marcus stood beside the judges, waiting. "I appoint no heir," Kale said. "Nightfall will be governed temporarily by its beta. In 1 year, the pack will choose its ruler." A murmur moved through the remaining witnesses. Kale looked at Isolde. "The throne is yours if you want it." "No." His expression tightened. "I will not teach my sons that every broken system needs another crown placed on the same chair." Marcus bowed to her. Kale signed the guardianship order next. His hand remained steady until he reached the line granting Isolde sole authority over Theo, Elias, and Lycan. "I will not challenge your decisions," he said. "You will not use command through the bond." "I will not." "You will not approach them without healer approval." Pain crossed his face. "I understand." He entered the old nursery under Mara's supervision. 3 bassinets stood where they had before, but the room no longer belonged to him. Theo slept nearest the fire, his left arm supported. Elias breathed in short, careful rhythms. Lycan remained beneath Isolde's cloak. Kale stopped several feet away. He did not ask to hold them. "I knew their names," he whispered. "I thought that made me their father." Isolde said nothing. "I do not ask you to tell them I was good." "Then what do you ask?" "That you tell them I tried to become better after I failed them." "If you do," she said, "they may see it themselves." At the altar, Kale and Isolde placed their palms on opposite sides of the blade. The mate bond rose between them, carrying 8 years of shared rooms, private laughter, battles survived, and wounds ignored. Kael's eyes closed. I am sorry. I believe you. Hope moved across his face. Then Isolda continued. Believing you does not require me to return. He bowed his head. Together, they pressed their blood to the blade. The bond tore once, clean and bright. Kael staggered. Isolda remained standing. Months later, Ironfang's moonstone courtyard held no forced mating ceremony. Varic placed a royal charter before Isolda. She read every line. Independent sovereignty. Equal war authority. No Lycan command over her or the triplets. No inheritance ritual without maternal consent. No requirement that Theo, Elias, or Lycan accept Ironfang's throne. Varic waited. You changed nothing, she said. They were your terms. Most kings negotiate. Most kings enjoy hearing themselves speak. A faint smile touched her mouth. Isolda signed. Varic signed beneath her name. Only then did she lift the new crown and place it on her own head. She did not become powerful because he chose her. He stood beside her because she had already chosen herself. That evening, Isolda worked at the council table, while the triplets slept in a large cradle nearby. Theo's hand rested over Elias's blanket. Lycan had kicked one foot free. Varic stopped outside the open door. Isolda looked up and nodded. He entered, crossed to the cradle, and tucked the blanket around Lycan without waking him. He did not ask what the boys would call him. He understood that trust, like fatherhood, could not be commanded. Kael had inherited a family with his crown. Varic earned the right to stand near one, only after Isolda opened the door. So, this is where Isolda's story closes. Are you still here with me? Then you already know this was never only about an Alpha King, a Lycan throne, or 3 newborn princes. It was about what happens when the person you trusted most betrays you, then expects your love, your duty, and your silence to make the betrayal easier for them. Isolda was hurt. She was misunderstood. She was blamed for reacting to pain she did not create. But she did not beg Kael to choose her. She chose her children, her dignity, and the part of herself that had been disappearing beneath years of sacrifice. We cannot control another person's loyalty. We cannot force honesty into someone who prefers excuses. What we can control is whether their failure becomes our permanent home. Walking away did not mean Isolda stopped caring. It meant she stopped confusing love with permission to be wounded again. And yes, rebuilding your life may feel less dramatic than a royal trial. Most brave choices do. They often look like one boundary, one quiet decision, and one locked door finally opened from the inside. If Isolda's choice stayed with you, comment one word: dignity. And if you stayed with her and her 3 little boys to this peaceful morning, please like, share, and subscribe for the next story. Dedict logo.